I'm going to say a few things, and then we're going to go a little out of order today because Ellen's going to start with her presentation. She has somewhere she has to run off to, and then I'll do the opening reflection. Unless, Ellen, maybe I should ask you, like, what's your timeline? When would you?
If it's okay to go first, I would appreciate it. And then I'm going to watch everybody else's on the recording because I want to hear the others also, plus
Okay.
the reflection. So I will definitely listen if I can go first. Or
okay. So first of all, though, I will say, I'm thinking, looking forward, because we have really, well, we have September and October. There's one, October 8th was the end of season gathering, but we had 2 sessions scheduled for September, but sadly September 10th doesn't have anybody who's, you know, presenting or opening reflection. So I think from my standpoint, I think we'll just cancel that one, and then we will have the September 17th the group outing to the turtle rescue farm. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll send out more about that. But it is in Lawrence, and so probably, I mean, the distance I hope is not, you know, a huge issue for anybody, but we could definitely carpool. So once we see, I probably will try to get a head count on that one, and then at least so that everybody knows who all's going, and then they can coordinate with each other, you know, looking to see how close people are to them. So with that said, on this beautiful Saturday summer morning, I'm glad to be here with all of you, and we are going to start with Ellen talking about pruning roses.
okay.
Everybody mute, please. Except Ellen, of course. Oh, and of course, just to remind you, because it's been a while since some of you have been on here, but if you have a comment or a question during it, we always welcome that. So just unmute yourself or press the space bar to temporarily unmute yourself. If you want to ask a question, feel free, but otherwise keep muted, because it really helps with the recording later that we can see the active speaker without a lot of interruptions.
Okay, thanks, Becky. I didn't know about that on the space bar. That's all you have to do. Okay. So feel free to ask questions. I think mine was specifically on knockout roses, and we have had such good luck with our knockout roses. That's one reason I kind of agreed to do this. And I hadn't really done any special reading or done anything special. We just kind of, I guess, was flying by the seat of our pants. But that is a good thing, because after I did the research, pretty much anything goes with knockout roses. You can't kill them. So I think that was our secret. So I watched a lot of videos and did a lot of reading, and some people would say you should prune them in the spring. And the key was when the forsythia bloomed. That was the time to prune them back. And another lady said, when those early spring buds start to emerge, and she says, I know it's hard to cut off that new growth that doesn't seem right, but she said, just trust me, that was the time to do it. You cut back that new bud as it emerges. And then other people say they like to do it in the fall. So it's just kind of your preference. One of the reasons for doing it in the fall would be to keep the canes from blowing in the winter wind. And we have done it both times, and I've always had good luck with them blooming. So I think it's pretty much what you want to do and what works as far as the timing. And then also as far as whether you cut them back very severely or just trim them a little, that's your choice too. We have cut them back severely to, you know, within 8 inches or so to the ground. and that will make them bushier and more dense. And that's called a rejuvenating pruning. And it can be as close as 6 to 8 inches or 12 inches off the ground. And like I said, the reason for that will make them fuller and more dense. Or if you want to retain your taller height, it kind of depends on where it is and how you want to control it. You can also only prune them back either a third, a half, or 2/3. So you really can't go wrong. And it did mention that after pruning, it's good to fertilize them around the drip zone, depending on the size of the bush. So like I said, it can go either way on pruning. If you're going to do a rejuvenating prune, be bold and don't be afraid, and just take it all the way back, or you can retain that height. So in general, these roses are very easy and very forgiving, but there are a few things to keep in mind. And one thing is, when you're pruning, to remove any crossing branches or crossing canes. And as the wind blows, that can cause wear and scars on the canes, and then that can allow some disease or insects in. So you kind of, if you know, it's good to prune those out if they're crossing. Pick the strongest looking one, or the one that's maybe going the direction you want the shape of your rose bush to go, and then cut out the other one. And it's important to remove any dead, spindly, or diseased canes. You want to be sure you get those out. And one person really stressed to keep it open and airy in the center of the shrub. They just felt it was better for the health of the plant to have good air circulation and not let it get too dense in the middle. And then another new one I hadn't heard was to prune any canes that are pointing inward. You wanted the canes to go outward and to eliminate any of those that pointed inward. Any questions about any of this, or anything you want to add?
I never realized, I guess just as far as rejuvenation, because I feel like in some ways mine needs to, I only have, well, I guess I have some out by the barn, but the biggest one up here by the house, and it's just not, it's not giving me a lot of joy this year because it's just not beautiful. And I'm thinking,
is it not blooming?
Well, it bloomed, but it was sort of sporadic, and I'm not sure what exactly I did wrong, but the idea of rejuvenating and just going, okay, just cut it back and
start over.
I can do. I mean, I'm thinking maybe I need to do that, and that's good to know that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wonder if you're taking a chance whether it'll come back or not. Or
you may want to alternate. You don't have to maybe do that every year, but if it's not doing well, I'd cut it back, and just ever so often, depending on how large you want it to get. Some more tips that they gave, some of them were new to me, was, of course, have a good pair of bypass pruners. But one thing that was new was they said to spray them with alcohol between each shrub to keep things from spreading. So I had never done that. And of course, you need some bigger loppers for the larger canes, and protective gloves. And if you're cutting it back by a third or half or whatever, this one lady suggested just taking a yardstick out there with you, and you could, as you start cutting the canes, then you can use those as a gauge, but a yardstick would help keep it the height that you wanted. And another thing I didn't know about, I'm sure others did, but they said that you can seal some of those larger canes with any kind of wood glue after you cut them. and that would seal out any way for insects or disease to get in. It just said any kind of wood glue. So that's something, Becky, if you cut them back severely and you've got some large cuts on those bigger canes, that might be a time to do that. And I don't know if we got any of our big composters on here, but one person said they would never compost any of their rose cuttings or deadheading because of black spot and any disease they didn't want in their compost. So I'm not sure, how others would feel about that, but she just said that she'd never composted any of her rose cuttings.
Theoretically, if you're composting correctly, it would get hot enough that it would
kill that.
Yeah. But
Okay.
having said that, I mean, it's not like I take a thermometer out to my compost bin either. So, and the other thing was, I think those are, unless it's like the very tops or whatever, those are kind of woody, and I don't usually put, and my compost anyway, if I want it to go pretty quickly, I don't put much in the way of sticks and woody stuff.
Right. Like I said, I was just passing that on. I wasn't saying for sure that, you shouldn't, but
I think knockout roses are some of the stickeriest. They'll cut you up pretty bad. I wouldn't want that in my compost.
Well, that's true too.
You're going to get stuck
working with it with your hands. And so kind of the last thing I had here was about deadheading. And I guess they're recommending deadheading maybe before I would. I do like to deadhead, but they said to do it as soon as it's past its peak and before the petals fall. And I guess I kind of let them hang on, a little bit past that, but you need to do that as soon as it's past its peak. And then to help prevent insects and disease to spread, you want to pick up, that's why you want to do it before the petals fall. And then if you do have petals, to rake those up. And most importantly, it's just to get the bloom off. But if you really want to be correct about it, to prune back to the first set of the 5 leaves when you're deadheading. But she did stress the most important thing is just to get it off. Of course, the reasons for the deadheading is it helps prevent disease and pests to spread, and they will rebloom sooner. Plus, it just looks so much better to keep your roses deadheaded. And black spot, I think this is something very common with roses. They basically said not to worry about it so much, that it is mostly cosmetic. It's caused by hot, humid weather. And it's important not to do any overhead watering. You should water them, from down below in the ground. And that's another reason why you should keep it open and airy when you're pruning the inside of your bush, and that air circulation helps to fight this black spot. But the leaves will just turn yellow and have dark spots, and it's a fungus infection. And there are stuff you can put on it, but basically they said it can be just cosmetic, and all you need to do is remove those infected leaves by just pulling them off by hand. You don't have to prune, but just pull off those yellow leaves. And then, of course, clean up any of those dried or dead leaves that have fallen to the ground, just mainly to keep that from spreading. So that was new to me to learn, about the black spot. I was never sure what that was, but they seemed to think it was mainly cosmetic and just to pull the leaves off. So I got most of this information on YouTube. If you want to go check and just type in knockout roses, there's a ton of YouTube videos out there. And any other questions or comments about knockout roses?
Thank you, Ellen. That was very helpful.
Okay.
I've been rose challenged my whole life.
Well, I kind of gave up on all the other roses. I used to try to grow some and I didn't have any luck. And these knockouts are, like they say, very forgiving. And I've gotten along great with them.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I don't have any knockout roses, but I just was wondering, all you guys that do have them, is there a certain variety that you like, or like a certain color, or I mean, I know that that's a type of rose, but is there one that you like more than another?
Anybody got any comments on that? I don't really know the names. I've got 3 that are really bright red, and then my daughter got me one that's more of a pink, and those are the only 2 colors that I have. I think I've got 4 different plants, and I've kind of got them all together. I've got the 3 red ones together and then the pink one right behind them. So and you can also, as you're pruning them, either make it kind of together as a hedge. Mine's kind of at the top of the driveway, and I kind of let those 3 go together. Or you can prune them as individuals, but I cannot remember the names of the kind I have. I just know I've got 3 red and 1 pink.
They have the double knockout roses too, which I've not had, but I don't have those. But does anybody have experience with those?
One of our bushes over the years was a double one, and it did well, but I haven't had really good luck. Right now, though, the one rose bush that I've got is going great guns this year, and I don't know why, because it didn't do well the previous years, but it's just really going well this year, and I've got to use some of these tips, Ellen, to see what I can do with it to keep it going for.
Okay. Like I said, just go to YouTube. There's an awful lot of videos on nothing but knockout roses. So, because I just kind of hit the highlights here.
I don't know what the difference was between the single bud and the double bud, but they were, basically they looked the same, except one was just a little fuller than the other.
I have noticed they don't have much scent, though. I kind of miss that. Or mine don't have much scent at all, but. And I think mine are doubles.
It's good curb appeal for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep us moving just for the sake of time. And Ellen, thank you so much.
Okay.
And have a
You're
good
welcome.
time with your high school friends, college friends. What is it?
Well, they're just friends, I guess, early marriage friends. It's when we all have babies.
Well, good. I'm glad you get together with them.
Okay.
So, thank
I
you
will
so
watch
much.
the recording later. Thank you.
Okay. We had talked about having the opening reflection next, but I think what I'll do is I'll wait and maybe it'll be a closing reflection. I don't want to run out of time, really. I guess I'll go next. How much time, Bill and Pam, do you think you would need?
Mine's really short on the lilacs, but
And mine's pretty short too.
really?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, it sounds to us like everything that we just heard about knockout roses applies to shrubs across the board. So to
Why don't
repeat
you
all
just
that,
go ahead? You guys go ahead with yours. Okay,
So we'll let
especially since
Pam-
it segues into it, kind of.
yeah. So let Pam do the lilacs, and then I'll come behind with the other part. So go ahead.
I was going to take a picture of our lilacs and use those as what you shouldn't do with your lilacs, which is basically we just have let them go and only cut out dead branches, that sort of thing. But I found out something really interesting, and it sounds like this is the main thing that you should do. But it says that when to prune is the most important thing with lilacs. And as a general rule, it says they should be pruned immediately after they're done flowering in the spring. Since lilacs set next year's flower buds right after the current year's flowers have faded, pruning later in the summer or fall will result in cutting off many or all of next year's flowers. So it says it applies both to larger common lilacs, as well as cultivars that are shorter and more shrub-like. Says the wind to prune them is pretty straightforward. In the spring after they're done flowering, the how is a little trickier, and they're just giving us the simple way to look at it. And again, like Ellen was talking about with the roses, there's maintenance pruning and rejuvenation pruning. And that's what we'll try next year, I think, is the rejuvenation pruning on ours. And
We may try the rejuvenation before this winter, so. we'll see.
No, you're supposed to do it in the spring.
I know.
And it says if they're, the lilacs are currently producing flowers every year, regular pruning is just basically shaping how you want to do, how you want them to look, as well as removal of dead, diseased, or broken stems. And it says you can also remove the spent flowers to help encourage cleaner growth habit and appearance. And it's also suggests always doing this by hand pruning rather than shearing. Another suggestion they have is when making the cuts, try to cut back to an outward facing bud, which I guess that makes sense, facing to the outer part of the bush towards the sun.
Mhm.
And then the second type is the rejuvenation pruning. And it says if you've had older lilacs in your landscape and they went unpruned for many years, they get overgrown, unruly looking. Many people mistake that they have stopped growing and flowering. Oftentimes what's happening is the flowers are being produced on or just the upper portion of the shrub where the plant has reached a taller height and is exposed to sunlight. And that's, I've noticed how ours do. And they say once they've reached the stage, we're staring at bare woody branches at eye level and below. And it says to get these back in shape, you remove entire older canes or stems that are 2 inches in diameter or larger to encourage the rejuvenation. And they suggest using the rule of thirds. And I think they suggested that with the hydrangeas too, which means only cut back a third of the branch at a time. You can, in future years, prune it back further, but this gives the shrub a chance to slowly transition back to a fuller, shorter shrub with more new growth filling in from the bottom. And it says if you do decide to drastically prune the entire shrub this way, all at once instead of a third of it, a little extra care like fertilization and watering are important to encourage new growth. And then they say, note that this all at once approach is generally not recommended for the health of the shrub. So it sounds like to me, they definitely, suggest the 1/3 rule. Says proper pruning goes a long way to ensure they put on a great show every spring. And there are several videos out there that will show you how to do it too. But I think it sounds pretty easy if you do it at the right time and don't take too much off at a time, that they should do better. So we're going to try that with ours next spring. And that's all I had. I got the good one. It was a pretty short one.
Thank you, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
Question?
Yeah. Any questions on lilacs? I'm not an expert, but I might have read some things.
Wish I had one.
And you have to be careful, I guess, because some of the cultivars, I think, don't have the really good lilac smell
Yeah.
like the old lilac type bushes do. So that's something to keep in mind.
I think
Heck
you
yeah,
can
that's
take,
the whole point. The beautiful smell. Gosh.
Mhm.
yeah, I think you can take, like stems from them and plant them in the ground. Some people, use root rejuvenator and put them in water and let them try and start to root and then put them in the ground. So maybe when we cut ours back, we can give you some shoots and let you give it a shot.
Always
be-
worth a try.
It would be free.
Oh,
Favorite price.
You know
Anita,
what?
I-
You can also, oh, I'm sorry, Ann, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I have just an old fashioned regular one that has, nice smelling flowers every spring. And thank you very much for this, because I always have wanted to know how to prune it. But I have tons of babies that come up every year. And so I can dig you up some anytime you want, Anita, like too many of them.
I'll
Yeah.
take it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give it a try. They like full sun, right?
Well, and I would say where mine isn't, I would say it's partial sun. But it has gone from a bush to, it looks more like a tree now.
Another way, so you're saying that those babies would make good trees or good bushes, right? Because another way to propagate it is air layering. And that's a whole other thing, which we won't get into, and I'm not an expert at, but our turtle farm guy is. He's the one that kind of turned me on to that whole idea. But anyway, lilacs are ones that you could air layer with. But I'm very interested in either one, Ann or Pam and Bill, in getting a start, because I have a lilac that Jim's dad gave us a long time ago, and it's just not, we've tried moving it different places. It's just not doing well. And I'd like to have some, I really would, because I love lilacs, but thank you.
Easy. So I'm going to do hydrangeas, and there's a lot of stuff about hydrangeas, so don't expect this to be very all-encompassing. But there, according to this, are 4 kinds of hydrangeas out there, and they're divided into 2 groups. One is old growth, and the other is new growth. So under the new growth are what they call smooth or wild hydrangeas, and panicle, P-A-N-I-C-L-E hydrangeas. And under old growth are oak leaf hydrangeas and big leaf hydrangeas. And I'll just kind of throw in there's also a climbing hydrangea. I didn't read about it. I didn't have enough time to read all there was about these. So, maybe it's one of these groups. I don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I can't tell you. So the new growth hydrangeas are the ones where every year from the bottom, you're going to get shoots come up. And then if you trim some back, if you did pruning, then you may get some flowers from it, but you'll get flowers from the new growth every year. It goes from there. And there's actually some out there that will bloom early in the spring on from there. So the new growth hydrangeas, they recommend, the more articles you're reading, the more confused you can get. But most of the recommendations is to after the winter time in the early spring, before you get growth, is to trim 1/3 of the plant back. So in other words, you can leave the blooms on. Some people like the look of those kind of, gray or brown blooms that are left over. The risk is that if you get a heavy ice storm, those things catch a lot of ice and they can cause your plant to split off or break off. And that could be harmful to the plant, of course. So, you know, it's a game you just have to play, deciding whether you want to like trim those blooms off, you know, say in the fall after the blooms are all, after they're done blooming, or whether you want to just leave them in all winter and let them and look at them and think, well, that's better than nothing there. But then go ahead.
And we have a new growth hydrangea and several old growth ones. And I think the new growth one is the most beautiful and the easiest to deal with. So I would suggest, if you haven't been into them before, get a new growth one. And we've cut that baby back to like 12 inches
Over and over.
over in the fall, and it just comes back gorgeous every year.
Yeah. But so the the old growth one's the one where basically it sets its blooms in the fall or in the late summer for the next year. You don't really want to trim those bushes back. In fact, most of the recommendations is just deadhead. So basically they're saying when the bloom's done, if you don't want to leave it on there for the winter, then just deadhead that off. So go as close as you can to the bloom and cut it off and let it go. As far as pruning those old growth plants, we're right back to the roses or the lilac thing. Go into the plant and cut out any weak branches, take out branches that keep air from getting in there. The same kind of thing as you get from the roses is like try and get the canes that point out, leave those. The ones that point in, you want to try and trim them back some because you're trying to keep air around them. I guess we've had no trouble with, we've done all the wrong things. I'm telling you. Hydrangeas, you can get the hydra from it. They're very water seeking plants. And so if you put them in a place like ours are, which is on the side of our garage, and it's red brick, so it's hot there and it can get dry there and they wilt. So when I start seeing them wilt, then I start watering. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. You should water them to keep them from wilting. You shouldn't water them after you see them on the, you know, they're telling you, we're dying here. Come on, give us some water. So what I do is I put water out there and sprinkle them. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to water them from the bottom. They shouldn't be watered from the top because they say that promotes fungus infections and that kind of stuff. We've gotten away with it. We haven't had any of those kinds of problems from watering from the top. But the recommendation is go out there with the hose and go right at the roots and water, you know, half an inch at a time to try and keep them from wilting, from getting to that wilting stage. But anyway, back to the new growth pruning thing, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about, is basically just deadhead off the blooms and try and not get too much down into them because the buds that set in the fall will be the blooms for the next year. I think that's pretty much.
You just spoke there, just to clarify, you said back to the new growth, you meant back to the old growth.
Exactly.
What you said now, I think everybody probably followed that, but
Yeah, no, that's right. Exactly. So that's the story.
And you're sticking to it.
And I'm sticking to it. So I guess I'll tell you that the big leaf are the hydrangeas that have color capabilities change based on pH in the soil. There's a bunch of, gosh, you can read about that until the end of time, but the biggest thing they say is aluminum in the soil, if it can be used in the plant, causes them to stay pink. You know, if you can release that aluminum that's in the soil, then they go to blue. So a lot of people put aluminum sulfate on there, which tends to cause them to be that blue color. Everybody seems, well, you know, there aren't a whole bunch of blue plants. There's lots of red plants and pink plants. And so, you know, everybody's striving to get blue in their flowers because blue is so rare, you know. But anyway, aluminum sulfate seems to be one of the things out there. I've found that either I've over aluminum sulfated or it kills the grass nearby. It's hard on your, but you know, lawns come and go and flowers don't, you know, so. I think I'm finished.
From the 100 pages that he has printed off there, I thought he was going to be much, much longer, but
Yeah,
That was his research, I guess.
he
Yeah.
condensed it.
I condensed it. Well, you have to condense it. There's too much, but
So, okay, and thank you. I appreciate that. I'm also hydrangea challenged, but I think a lot of us are. We've already talked about that. But we'll just maybe just keep plugging away, and I might just specifically personally seek out a new growth because maybe, you know, like you said, they're easier and you get the beauty. So,
And tons of blooms.
yeah, tons of blooms and they're really beautiful white blooms.
and they don't like as much sun either. Like you said, they do well and not quite as sunny.
Yes,
I understand.
yeah.
Okay, well, I know we're moving on. We've got about 20 minutes left to go. So I'm gonna keep moving here on rhododendron. Well, I always say it wrong, rhododendrons. We'll just call them rhodies. How many people here have a rhododendron? Nobody. Okay, I do. I have two. Okay. Well, they're pretty plants, and I think when I first moved to Martinsville, that's when we built this house, and I had seen one and I thought, and it was in the spring and it was so beautiful. I wanted to have some. So I put 4 in front of our house, which was it was a rookie mistake, because if they'd all lived, that's all I would have had up there. 2 of them died, 2 are still there. So they're evergreens. They're not native here, as you know. Mountain laurel is in the same family, and there's a lot of those out in North Carolina in that area, which they're so beautiful. And then of course the azaleas are in the same family, but azaleas and rhodies are not necessarily treated the same as far as pruning. The problem in, you know, the cold Indiana winters can damage them, and that's why, you know, if people like them, they're kind of intimidated about trying them because they may not survive. But if you plant them away from prevailing winds and facing east seems to be the best. I mean, if they have too much sun, they're gonna that's not going to be good for them. They also like they're acid loving fertilizer. So as far as pruning, well, I'll say something about the fertilizer. The best time to fertilize is in late fall, and then again right after the spring bloom and pruning. They bloom like in early May is when you'll have this beautiful short-lived, you know, blooming. So, but if they're maintained, they can be a really pretty evergreen, you know, for the foliage of it. So again, there's some things that are repeated here. You know, you can prune for maintenance, for shaping, and for rejuvenation. And overgrown plants here are not quite the problem, although if they're happy in their space, it sure can be. I've seen them overgrown. I had some videos I thought I would show, but I don't know if I'll be able to really as time-wise. But so I have some summarize or some information here to go over. Especially if you don't have a rhododendron, I thought that videos might help because it's hard to visualize if you don't have experience with the plant. So I did think, and I may still, we'll see. The best time to prune these is early spring, right after the blooms fade. And we talk about deadheading. I know when I first had mine, I did all this research and I, you know, fertilized when I was supposed to and used the right fertilizer. And it was really a big deal, you know, important to remove those spent flowers once they bloom. And honestly, you know, obviously that doesn't happen when they grow wild, but it's especially important for, you know, if you have a new plant that you're trying to encourage growth on, just, you know, removing those spent flower trusses, it'll improve the next year's bloom. Because if you leave them, then more energy goes into the seeds and you want the energy to be into the growing. So it's a tedious job because you're just pulling off those flower trusses and it's kind of sticky and it's tedious, especially if you have a lot of blooms, but it is important if you're trying to get one started. They recommend using gloves for that, but I don't because I can just feel it better and do it better. One of the things that one source that I read talked about pinch pruning, and that was a little different. It was just before the spring bloom. And I think this was to control size, which keeping the right shape of it is the most challenging thing of it, making it look like a pretty, because it's going to be the plant too, you know, and how it looks all summer and winter, you know. So it is important with the rhodies, but this was more to control size. And I ran out of time to research it better, but it talked about, it's not the, you know, so it's before it blooms and you have this bud there that's been there since, like I've got flower buds that are going to be next year's right now, you know, that are going to be next year's flowers. So before they bloom, you pinch prune, not the flower bud itself, but the little teeny ones that are around it. I'm going to screen share here because I have a picture I took out there of mine. Let's see. Oh, I might have put it in my. Nope, wait. That. Wait a minute, I'm trying to get to my. You can hear me, but you can't see me, right?
Right.
Okay. I think I just sent this picture to myself because it'd be easier to show you. Okay.
Now we see a picture.
Can you see it? Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just get it big. I'm very good at screen sharing. Oops, something happened. Okay, so here you can see, can you see my cursor? But here's the bloom for next year. And I think the pinch pruning he was talking about, we're getting rid of those little things because these are the things that are going to grow up and like after it blooms, after this blooms, and then you pinch that off. These are the things that are going to grow up and form new worlds, what's the word, but you know, new shoots, I guess. So anyway, that would be the pinch pruning that he talked about. Okay, so, and then the other thing is once those new shoots come up that I just showed you, those little things, they will come up and be light green and sticky. And, you know, this is what it's going to make the plant taller. And one thing you want to do with the rhodie, I mean, I don't want it to get, mine would be above actually would be taller than my house if I didn't prune it every year, you know. But one thing you can do with those light green new shoots after they bloom is to cut those back, like pinch, let's see, I was reading this, like, you know, pinching back those new shoots before the, let's see. So when you pinch a new shoot, do it when it's at least an inch long, pinch off half of it. Like you need to do that fairly early because those things will get bigger, taller. I mean, you know, and then before you know it, and I have not done that. I haven't been very timely about taking those off when they're starting to form. But what it's saying is when they're about an inch long, that's when you want to pinch them back by about half. So that's sort of a refined thing there that you may not be ready for if you haven't. But if you're starting a new rhodie, it's important if you're going to start a new rhodie about keeping the shape of it. And otherwise, some of these things are the same, like, you know, when you're going to prune And again, you're going to prune the branches and so on after you've removed those flower trusses. You're going to do that all at the same time. That's when you're going to prune them. So, and you start with the dead, diseased, and damaged stems, going back to healthy wood. I didn't prune. I think this is probably true of any plant or shrub that, I mean, if it's a young plant, you want to go easier on it with the pruning until it's gotten established. That might go without saying. But again, some of this, is universal. You want to get rid of the interior, the inward facing branches, because you need air in there. You don't want it to get all overgrowth in the middle. And the rest of it, I think I might show a video. It might be a thing to do to show one of them, because I think it'll be helpful to visualize it. So I'm going to show you my favorite one, because it will show what I just was talking about as far as, and it'll get into some of the actual cutting the branches of the tree, of the shrub. But in case this one doesn't mention this, I think she will. But when you're actually cutting the branches of the rhododendron, it's, if you want to cut the length back, you're going to go just above a whorl of leaves. But the most important thing when you're looking at the branch itself is there's these little dormant buds on the branch. And if you can't see those buds, then it's not going to grow. You want to cut above a bud, above a whorl of leaves, to make it look nice, because you want it to branch out right above that whorl of leaves, but it has to have those dormant buds there, or else it's not going to do anything. It's not going to, you might as well just get rid of the branch. So I'm going to go right to this video. Let's see. Is there any questions so far? Does anybody have any interest in even? I think I told you that I chose this one because I feel like I need a refresher on how to, on my own. But
I mean, the principles probably apply to a lot of things. So
that's true. Yes. Yeah, I found this one to be a little bit of a challenge, just the shaping of this rhodey. But then I find a lot of things to be a challenge. So
Yeah, I'm interested because I'm looking for ideas for our front. I'm going to landscape it next spring, and so I'm trying to get ideas. So I am interested in the rhododendron.
Yeah, to me, this whole thing, I don't know, it just grows a little differently than anything I've tried to do before. But let's see. I thought this one was very helpful.
Let this sweet mineral melt in
Not
your
this,
mouth to
but-
rebuild your gums and teeth.
Where is it?
We're going to talk today about grooming
wasn't it.
rhododendrons, both
sorry.
deadheading and pruning. A lot of times when a rhody bloom finishes, it's really helpful to the bush, especially if you want it to grow well, is to take the old dead flowers
I'm
off.
sorry, I
Do
know that you
just by
can't see it
snapping
because I
off
can't either.
the whole truss, just like that. And what that does is it keeps the rhody from trying to set any seeds, and it puts the energy into growing. So it's something that if you have a lot of rhododendrons,
I'm
it
trying
can
to
be
figure out how to
quite a
stop
chore,
this.
but
Most of it.
it's
So I could start over. Apologize.
We're going to talk today about grooming rhododendrons, both deadheading and pruning. A lot of times when a rhodi bloom finishes, it's really helpful to the bush, especially if you want it to grow well, is to take the old dead flowers off. And you can do that just by snapping off the whole truss, just like that. And what that does is it keeps the rhodi from trying to set any seeds, and it puts the energy into growing. So it's something that if you have a lot of rhododendrons, it can be quite a chore, but it's especially on young rhodis that you're really trying to establish, it's a really good thing to do. And it's a good thing to wear gloves while you do it, because many rhodis, the base of those flower trusses are really sticky, and you can get your hands pretty sticky in a very short amount of time. So another way to keep rhododendrons compact is by controlling the way they grow. So you can see on this rhododendron, a lot of the shoots that are coming out are singles. Here's a double here. Here's a double here. This is a double. But all of the ones that are singles, we can make this rhododendron grow a little less wide and tall by taking the singles off at this time of year. And by doing that, the new buds that are down in those leaf axils will push again. And then rather than just having one shoot that gets long, you'll have multiple shoots that stay shorter. So rhododendrons come in two kinds. This is what's called a lepidote. It has big leaves that are kind of in a whorl, big flower trusses. Once again, you know, you can come through after it's bloomed and deadhead. But this is the kind of rhodi that is most likely to throw big, long single shoots and get a little too big. So this is the one that's real important to go through if you want the plant to stay fairly compact and not take off not just the flower trusses, but take off those single shoots. So there's a single shoot over here.
That's something I've never done, and I'm going to try it.
Then it will push again and again. It will push smaller, more compact growth that way. On lepidote rhodis, if you haven't been keeping up on the breaking off the new shoots, you can come in and prune them. And the way you prune a lepidote rhodi, one of these large leaf rhodis, is if you look along the woody stems down below the growth, you can see little bumps. There's a bump there, there's a bump there, there's one there. These are buds. And if I come in and cut that branch off right above some of those buds, all of those buds are going to push new shoots as this rhodi's growing this spring. And so I can get kind of a reduction in size and get a whole bunch of new shoots back here. And that's a way that you can keep a rhodi that gets really large, kind of cutting it back occasionally. As long as you can find those buds along the stems, you can cut it back. So the other kind of rhododendron is called an elepidote. And an elepidote, rather than having large leaves that are on a whorl around the stem, they tend to have leaves coming out alternately along the stem.
This is like the azaleas.
They tend to be a little bit shrubbier. Their leaves tend to be a little bit smaller. When you want to prune something like this, you don't have to find dormant buds. You don't have to find those little green bumps along the stem, because they've got lots of buds along the stem that you can't even see. You can come in and just cut them anywhere, and all of those little buds will push again. This is really nice if you have one of these small leaf elepidote type rhodis, and this includes most of your evergreen azaleas. If you need to cut them back, you can just cut them back to whatever shape or size you want, and they will repush. You can almost hedge these. In fact, you can hedge them. You can turn them into a hedge, because you don't have to find those good buds along the stem to cut them back.
I found that very helpful,
We
especially
put
the
Lumi to the
idea.
test where we looked at Lumi compared to a
Whoops.
shower alone. This is odor here.
Oh
This is
my.
when you would take a shower at 0 time. This is you after a shower 12 hours later. The average person has a crotch odor.
Sorry about that. Did you guys all hear that? Crouch odor. Oh my goodness. I didn't see that coming. Anyway, okay. I hope that was interesting. It was very interesting to me, because I feel like I just decimate my roadies, and I've lost any scientific basis to most of what I do. So with it, so that was helpful. There's a lot of good resources out there if you decide you want to do that. Any questions? And we are at the end of our time here. I guess I will finish with a little closing. I might have to, it wasn't going to be long, but I'm just trying to decide how I'm going to do this. I'm reading out of this, it's called The Living Forest, and it was gifted to us. Is there anybody here that gifted this? It was gifted to Jim, really. He couldn't remember who gave it to him, and there's nothing on the inside, but it might have been Phil Gawley. It seems like, I don't know, but it's a really nice, it's beautiful pictures of deciduous forest, and just it's a wonderful book of photography, but it also tells the story as well. And you know, it goes through every aspect of it, the canopy and bird life, leaves, you know, animals and that kind of thing. So I recommend the book. I'm going to read from the preface, and then a little bit, and then from the first chapter, the beginning of it, which was about canopy and bird life. So in the preface, they say, it's our intention that this book is a reminder that the living part of our planet, the biosphere, is just a thin and lovely membrane. We have harmed much of this membrane, but because it is alive, it has the ability to heal. Here we celebrate the part of the biosphere known as the temperate deciduous forest and all the life it contains. It's our wish that increased understanding will provide motivation for allowing the forest to continue unimpeded on its wild trajectory. Although the photographs on these pages are stunningly beautiful and we can witness such views, it's impossible to really see the whole of a forest. A forest is a complex web of energy and matter that reaches far beyond the confines of identified acreages. Much of what a forest does and is invisible and can never be captured by the camera. At other times, the energy and the matter align on the scale of human perception, and we see, oh, a blossom, a salamander, a mushroom, a bear, all amazing, all wonders to be studied forever, and even then to be felt more than fully understood. Take any one of these photographic images and spend some time with it, and you will understand what the poet William Blake meant about seeing the world in a grain of sand. These nodes of matter show us the never-ending flow of energy right here, right this moment. And I was going to read a longer excerpt, but I think I'm just going to read the first chapter. Was on the canopy and bird life. I think this is just, it kind of speaks to going into the forest and trying to experience it. And I won't go farther than for the sake of time. So looking toward the sky, we are going to step into the forest now. We are leaving behind the cars and the computers and maybe even the people. We are going to take this journey to see, to feel an ecosystem that has been around for a very long time, one that doesn't depend on humans, although we depend on it. This is a real place, and it may not be far from your home. It's a place where both the learning and the mysteries go on forever. Let's start by looking up into the canopy. To really feel a forest canopy, we must use different senses. And often the most useful one is the sense of imagination. You might spread a cloth and lie on your back. Be patient. Just wait. Soon you'll notice the swaying of the tops of the trees. Note that they don't all sway with the same motion. Give it more time. Just watch. Do the taller trees sway more than the shorter ones? But they're not all moving together, right? the movement seems more like a circling, like an eddy. First this part of the forest, and then see how the wave moves through and ends up over there. This forest is very different from the one we walk through that seems solid and still. Listen to the hushing music the trees make as they move, the most relaxing sound. As the Apostle John said in the Bible, the wind blows where it pleases and you hear its sound, but you don't know where it comes from or where it's going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit, John 3, verse 8. And your spirit moves too as you lie there bathed in the susurrations of the green heights. The Zen monk Shunryu Suzuki put it this way: when we hear the sound of the pine trees on a windy day, perhaps the wind is just blowing and the pine tree is just standing in the wind. That is all that they are doing. But the people who listen to the wind and the tree will write a poem or will feel something unusual. That is, I think, the way everything is. So that just, it kind of, as I read that, I felt like I was there, and it's a living thing that we are a part of and experiencing. So let's just try to pay more attention going forward. Maybe lay down a mat in the woods and look up at the canopy. I've never done that. So thank you again, everybody.